All right. We have places, people, places. All right. Good evening. Welcome to the June 22nd school committee meeting of 2022. We have a bit of a packed agenda tonight, but a great one as usual. And we get to start with the Cpac year-end update. We have a few guests here to present to us from the Cpac Executive Board. We will then move through to our public comments, consent agenda, and reports. We'll then move from there to the year-end personnel update and into new business, where we have the Special Education and Student Services year-end update. We also have the FY22 year-end update and budget transfer process, and then the FY22-23 school calendar update and approval. After that, we will adjourn from open session to executive session to conduct strategy sessions and preparations for negotiation with non-union personnel, or to conduct a collective bargaining sessions, or conduct negotiations with non-union personnel, the superintendent. We will then return after that and make an announcement or an update with regards to the superintendent contract and salary, and vote that if necessary. And finally, we will end with the school committee reorganization and any liaison and subcommittee discussion thereafter. So, pretty packed agenda. And before we get started, we need to officially start with a motion to take things out of order.
I move to take out of order item E1, Cpac year-end update.
Do I have a second? Seconded by Carla. All in favor? All opposed? And it passes 5-0. Real quick, Erin apologizes. She's rushing here as fast as she can, but she's not quite here yet. But we knew we were going to start a little bit before she got here, but I'm sure she'll be here as you're talking. So we will switch over to your presentation. And this is working if you want to try it back there. A little sensitive, so if it goes slow, we'll switch it for you.
Okay, thank you.
The right and left.
Okay, hello, thank you. My name is Maria Morgan, and I'm presenting on behalf of the Cpac and our executive board. We have Eunice Kenyon is here with us, and Laura Jolson is watching from home. And thank you for accommodating us tonight, because we were supposed to be at a previous meeting and we could not, so thank you for having us tonight. Okay, so this is our Cpac 2021, 2022, 2022 year in review. And so the framework for the presentation tonight will be the Cpac mission statement. And so the main part of our mission says the Cpac's mission is to work for the understanding of, respect for, and support of all children with special needs in the community. And then there are 4 subparts to the mission, and we'll go through each one of them and how we have worked to address that part of the mission statement this year. So, this school year in 2022 was a year in transition for us. So there was the previous board, and they were in office until October, and then there was a period of limited leadership. And then the new board came on in January. We were elected. So there was a little bit of a limbo period there in the middle of the year. And so the primary focus for us as a new board was transitioning to a more effective Cpac from that limbo period and outreach to members in the school district. And I had been on the Cpac board previously, but Laura and Eunice had not been on the Cpac board previously, so we were sort of transitioning and learning how to move about our mission. Okay, so the first part, so again, the main part of the mission statement is to work for the understanding of, respect for, and support of all children with special needs in the community. And so one way we do that is we promote a network of parents of children with special needs and provide a forum to share information. We did a number of things towards this part of our mission this year. The most important thing that we did is we revised the bylaws to remove open meeting law language. So Cpacs in Massachusetts used to be governed by open meeting law, but Cpacs have an open and undetermined membership as they are open to all interested parties, and they are not decision-making bodies. In other words, they are not empowered to act collectively. So the Massachusetts Division of Open Government issued a determination letter dated October 28th of 2021, and the conclusion was that Cpacs were not public bodies subject to the open meeting law, and that unless Cpac bylaws gave authority to the officers to act collectively, the executive board was also not subject to the open meeting law. This change was fully endorsed by Cpac, which is a project of the Federation of Children with Special Needs, which supports both volunteer parent leaders and school district administrators to build effective parent-school partnerships to support family engagement. According to the Cpac website, its hope was that the ruling would allow a quote, robust discussion of issues, an opportunity to grow Cpac membership, and an incentive for more parents to step up to leadership in your communities.
Okay,
So what that meant for Reading Cpac is that the decision allowed for us to remove some formality from Cpac and the Cpac board. So we had a wonderful bylaws committee that actually was in place, so we were able to call on them, and they responded and were able to redraft our bylaws and removed all of the open meeting law language. So at our February business meeting, we reviewed and approved those changes. As I mentioned, I've been on the board twice. This is my second time, and the first time was prior to the decision. And I can say that personally, I am much more comfortable serving now that I don't feel anxiety about potentially violating open meeting law. So this has been a great change for us, and I think it encouraged more parent involvement, and we can just be a little bit more free, we can talk. So this I think has been huge for us this year. And so we want to thank the bylaw committee that came, and these were just general members, not executive board members, who came and revised our bylaws for us. Okay, and we have regular business meetings. So we continue to have regular business meetings. They occurred monthly this year with the exception of December and March. Despite not being required to follow open meeting law, Cpacs still have the same legislative authority to act as advisory councils to the school district. And best practices would include sharing an agenda in advance of a meeting, discussing advisory issues in a public forum, and keeping meeting minutes. So we have done our best to keep up with this, and we will continue to do our best. All parents are busy, but Cpac board members are typically parents of one or more children who have needs that result in an IEP or a 504 plan. So we can be stretched thin, but we do post our agendas and strive to post minutes in a timely fashion. Many hands make light work, though, so here is my first plug for asking other parents to step in and fill the remaining available positions on the Cpac board. We can have up to 6 executive board members, and we currently have 3. We did enjoy the flexibility this year to cancel meetings when it made sense to do so, like we did in March, as we had no urgent business, but we had plenty to plan for April and beyond. And we also enjoyed flexibility to be able to move the location of our meetings when it made sense to do so. The first time was in April. We had it at RCTV because we had a movie night. And then in May, we had a hybrid meeting, which we were able to do at Parker, so we moved it so we could have a hybrid meeting. And then in June, we changed our meeting to a social, and we had a parent social at Horseshoe Grill last week. So even just those changes that we felt like we could do them without having to follow open meeting law, I think it gave us a lot of flexibility and freedom and made for a more robust organization this year. And so our business meetings, like I just mentioned, so we were able to have a hybrid meeting, which was awesome. So Ricky Shankland at Parker helped us with that. It was much more convenient for members. We had many more participants because people could come in person if they wanted to. They could tune in from home. They could shut their camera off during bedtime and take care of kids. So we loved it. We hope to continue doing that. And this might be a nice option for us. We were excited to see this coming in. Before it could either be only Zoom or only in person. So we liked the hybrid. And then, so expanding the social outreach. So with the removal of that open meeting law requirement, we felt confident in providing and participating in more informal connection opportunities for our members, which is something parents and caregivers of children with special needs really benefit from, just these informal conversations and to feel maybe less isolated and less alone. We have started inviting parents to stay after the adjournment of a meeting to just connect with one another. Before, doing so might have come with the risk of board members wading into open meeting law violation territory. But now we feel that the three of us can stay and chat, and it helps personalize the experience for us and hopefully also for our general members. We had a social aspect to our April business meeting. As I mentioned, we had the movie, it was called This Is Not About Me. And so we had that at RCTV, and we were able to have a little social time. We had a business meeting, a little social, and then we watched the movie together and then had a discussion. We also had a parent social, as I mentioned, last week. And then over the summer, we'll be having informal patio nights. There are 4 of them that parents can sign up to attend. And we want to thank the hospitality of some of our members for hosting those patio nights. Sorry, I'm scanning. Okay, and we change this a little bit. Okay, and then we will be involved in town events, so we will do the Christmas tree festival next year. We didn't do it this year because we didn't have a board in December. And then Reading Friends and Family Day, we were supposed to be part of it, but then COVID hit the board. So Understanding Disabilities helped us out and passed out flyers for us. Okay, so, all right, another part of our mission, advise the Director of Student Services, the school committee, and the superintendent on special education programs and policies and parent and teacher training needs. Okay, so we have, we feel, established a strong partnership with the Department of Student Services. Dr. Jennifer Stice and Ms. Allison Wright regularly attend our business meetings where they are always actively engaged and seem to truly listen. We are very grateful for their presence and sincere interest in Cpac matters. In addition, the board meets about monthly with Jen and Allison and enjoy an open channel of communication with them. The Cpac board uses this channel to share and receive pertinent information and advice. A lot of things are underway in Reading right now that are connected to past Cpac efforts. Literacy and recreational opportunities have both been important Cpac topics in the recent past. And this year, the district had an active committee tasked with reviewing literacy needs, and there has been progress made in providing more recreational opportunities for individuals with special needs. And we've helped communicate new programs to the community. So as we find out about things, we pass on that information to our members. We worked out it's a mutual partnership to support one another, Student Services and Cpac, to help with whatever initiatives we have. And so they help communicate our things, and we help communicate their things. Communicate parent concerns. So as I mentioned, we do meet monthly. We strive to tell parents to follow, the proper chains. If parents ever do come to us, and even if they don't come to us, like, we just put it out there, you should be in communication. You should be partnering with your children's educators, so the teacher, the teen chair. If we do hear that someone has some sort of an issue, we typically ask if they've gone through that channel. And then our advice is always to go to Jen and Allison also, and, I've never heard past that point, it's not like anyone's ever been like, oh, we tried that and that didn't work. It usually it ends at that point in terms of Cpac involvement. I know that I asked Tom before this meeting, what should we focus on? And I know that this was an important part. I don't know how to say more simply that, we have a really good relationship, I feel, and we're very grateful for it. And I feel very lucky for the relationship that Cpac has with Dr. Stice and with Allison. Anything, we can email and they get back to us right away. And anytime there's any kind of confusion, it's cleared up very quickly. So I don't know how to say, I don't think it needs to be said more complicated than that, but
it's simple, straightforward, to the point. That works.
That's good. All right, so next. All right, promote communication and sharing of information between Cpac members, local, state, and national organizations, councils, and groups, as well as within the community, to encourage understanding, acceptance, and inclusion of students with special needs. Okay, so, hold on. Okay, so like I said, we have regular meetings. And we share a lot of information at the regular meetings. And then we have a lot of ways that we try to disseminate information. So through email. So we email our members regularly, and then here we are. Okay, we also regularly email our members with pertinent information and news. We are grateful to district administrators for regularly including updates from us in their newsletters. We also provide information on Facebook and Instagram. Oftentimes, the information we share was shared with us by general members, and we appreciate the active role these members take in participating in and helping our network. Anyone interested in information from us can email us to be put on our confidential mailing list. Look for our information in school and district newsletters, and can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and Instagram is new this year. There is a lot of information to share, but many other things to do as well. So many hands make light work, so here's another plug for asking other parents to step in and fill the remaining available positions on the Cpac board. We can have up to 6 executive board members, and we currently have 3. We receive a lot of emails of opportunities and share out as much as we can, but it is hard to do so in a way that is centralized and regular. Helping in this area and others would not actually require board membership, though, so we can, those parents that are emailing us, we ask them to continue doing so, and people could step in and help in this area without being an actual board member. Okay, so collaboration with other Cpacs, Division of Equity and Social Justice, community partners, and BARC. Okay, so the previous board did collaborate with other Cpacs. We have not done as much, but we can. We just haven't done that yet. We met with the director of the Division of Equity and Social Justice early on. The board members met with her, and then she came to one of our meetings, the May one, and spoke with folks there. And we will have a Cpac parent representative on PAIR, the Partners and Allies for Inclusive Reading, to help make sure that those with disabilities are part of the vision of a Reading for all. We have been working with other community partners, and I was not part of this meeting, but we are partnering with the Embark program. There was some talk about that, so you can see Eunice for more information on that if you'd like. Okay, and then we try to, as I said, we try to publicize our public schools initiatives pertinent to special education. Okay, I'm going to move along. Okay, so we provide informational workshops to parents, educators, students, and professionals. So we hosted our rights presentation in October. It was Understanding the IEP. Eunice attended the Visions of Community Conference in March, which was put on by the Federation for Children with Special Needs, and we had a district representative also attend. We promoted workshops and informational sessions and articles for special needs topics. So all those topics there, at some point we promoted access to either workshops or just information about those topics. Okay, I think. Okay, thank you for bearing with me as I go through this. Okay, and so looking toward the 2022-2023 school year, some goals or things that we're looking forward to. So providing new social networking opportunities for parents and children, expanding the workshops. So we'll probably have the evaluation and eligibility basic rights workshop in October. We have ideas for other workshops, which we're working out, partnering with the district, and then also taking some advice from parents that have suggested some topics. So we're working on our calendar right now. We'd like to expand the Friends of Cpac, which is a group of parents that have said that they would help us out with discrete tasks, maybe not be on the board, but support us in more temporary ways. We're going to explore fundraising and improve the website in partnership with the school. We know that that's happening with the school, but we would also like to improve our own website, expand partnership with community support groups, and continue to develop a trusted partnership with student services and schools. Okay, so our mission again was, or is, to work for the understanding of, the respect for, and support of all children with special needs in the community. when parents are engaged, when they're partnering, when schools are partnering, just everything goes so much better. So we feel like Cpac helps that to happen. And we want to thank the former board, and we want to thank student services personnel, especially Jen and Allison, and also the team chairs. We want to thank district administrators who helped share our information. We'd like to thank our school committee liaison, Erin Gaffin, and most importantly, we want to thank all the general members who are the heart of the Cpac.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Any questions from anybody on the board? Sean?
Yeah, just one quick one. I think it was the second of the sort of submissions was around advising the superintendent, the students, director of student services, school committee. I was thinking, so first of all, I'm thrilled to hear about the sort of quality of the relationship, the strength of the relationship, and the positive partnership there. And I know we've obviously got a liaison assigned. Is there a need, or would it be beneficial to have sort of a formal channel to talk about the needs of the special education community, prior to goal setting, for instance, or in a more formal with the, sort of full committees, with the full committee participating, or to think about, we've got a policy subcommittee. Some of those policies are 25 years old and probably don't reflect our best thinking today about how to create an inclusive school environment. Like, is there a need to sort of think about formalizing some of that advisory role and creating more opportunities to come in and think about some of the specific things that are in our purview?
When you say goal setting, what do you mean? Goal setting
for the superintendent in particular is one of the things that's within our purview. And so, and the district, yeah.
I don't know if there's a need for that, because I don't know what the need is. I know that it feels very relationship-based, I would say that, in terms of that advisory role that we play. And like, it works really well because
Sure.
we have someone who wants to participate in that way. If Jen won the lottery and like ended up in, Costa Rica or something, I don't know. So I guess
Question?
we'd be interested, sure, we would be interested in being part of that. I guess I would defer more to Erin on that, because I don't really know what the need would be, but we would certainly want to help if we could.
I think the way our partnership is structured now, and we are equally as grateful for working with the Cpac, is when they bring issues to Allison and I, we really do have discussions. Is this a one-off, or is this a systems issue that we need to address? And we may call in Erin or talk about it and adjust things. And then we also reach out to them when there are issues, or we need a volunteer, or we want them to look at something. We would easily say, hey, we're working on this. And they sometimes say, great, one of us can do it, or we'll reach out to families. So if I almost wonder if the more formal part comes from student services, or the liaison and student services together to just inform the committee of where we are, because I do think we have that channel of communication now that seems to be working really well, and allows us to kind of partner and really thought partner around, oh, this is isolated, or this is really something we need to bring forward to the school committee. And we do have those conversations.
And I think also, as things come up, so for example, the program reviews, like Jen always comes to our meetings, or came to our meetings and talked about, this is going to be coming, we're going to be doing these program reviews. And then she's presenting about it tonight, but like, we got the heads up that the timeline for the program reviews was coming up tonight. And then a principal search committee, the RISE one just happened, and they approached us and said, we'd like to have someone on the Cpac board be part of that. So yeah, I guess a lot of it is dependent on the relationship.
So I'll reframe it a little bit from a question perspective, because Sean's question was why I asked you to think about this one in particular. And I think somewhat along those lines, and I think relationships are huge, and I obviously love seeing the relationship, and Jen and I talk about the relationships matter all the time, and she knows that. She's been advocating that since the day she walked in the door. But one of the things we also talk about is people are replaceable. Like you said, she may win the lottery and go away, right?
Doesn't mean she's replaceable.
Doesn't mean, well, yeah, people, maybe that's not the right terminology. Thank you for correcting me. So my reframing's not working very well. But policies and programs should continue on regardless of the people. If I recall correctly, we have one policy on special education right now, one, right? And to Sean's point, there's probably sprinkling of places in there where we could be more inclusive in language and people and disability status or other things like that as well, that maybe here is something to think about as we go forward. And you already touched on the program reviews, and we're going to get a little bit of a preview of the timeline of that. And maybe that is a good point to come into that as well, is as you all are going through the program reviews with Dr. Stice, with Allison, if there's things in there that say, you know what, if we really want to systematically put this in place, we need to put a policy in place. Or we need to make sure that the program definition is slightly augmented or better or something along those lines, right? And that's the advisory role that the Cpac plays by law, right? I love the fact that Jen will come to us. I love the fact that our liaison can come to us, but by law, that's your advisory role. And so that's where I was thinking, if there's something there that we can build on, that as you go through program reviews, as you understand that and think, okay, we want to codify this, for lack of a better way to say it, this is how it should be done. That would be something I'd like to see. It may not be in time for goals, considering the timeline that we put out there, but it may be in time for the goals next year, right? And something to think about as the Cpac Executive Committee and Board is looking at things going forward. Does that make sense in terms of the ask there?
Yes, it does. Noted.
Can
Absolutely.
add to that? So part of what we're going to hear about the policies as we keep moving forward in our tiered focus monitoring, as several of you know, we were reaching out as we were trying to get the documentation together, and we were like, you know what, our policies probably aren't as inclusive enough as they need to be. And so we actually had put in some language that we're going to be looking at that and working on it. So again, I wonder if maybe us formalizing like our process for communicating to all of you which direction it comes from. I think that's worthwhile for us to have that conversation.
Absolutely. And also I'll just say this, it's always in the frame of continuous improvement. We're always just looking at what can we do to get better in this way or that way or the other way. And you all have done a phenomenal job as well picking up the mantle this year. One thing you didn't really highlight on here that I think, I've seen a lot in the community is really that community engagement, like the YMCA work that you were doing with Jen and whatnot, the adaptive sports that we kind of put the tamper on, but is going to come out soon with the Special Olympics related association and whatnot. Those are kind of the non-educational things that you guys have been putting together, and kudos to you for taking that angle as well. I know that was Amy's real passion in one of the early meetings, but it's great to see that that's been driven forward and picked up, and I just want to appreciate and vocally say how much I appreciate that.
We're super grateful too. I think that was something where the need was vocalized from Cpac, and then we don't have the power to bring all those people together, but we were able to vocalize that this is a need. And parents really responded when the Supporting All Learners listening session was happening. We advertised that pretty heavily, and a lot of people attended. So it spoke volumes that it was a real need that people wanted.
That's a town-wide thing that happened as a result of it. I mean, the Recreation Committee, the YMCA,
Yep.
Embark might have been part of that. I forget exactly. There's been, so, and I know you were key into that too, Jen. So, thank you for that as well. So,
Okay.
Maria, thank you.
Thank you.
She's like, let me off.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much. Okay, so we will now move on, and we're playing with our new technology here, so pardon us for a little bit. I guess I didn't state that at the beginning, just so the rest of the committee knows, because not everybody knows. We are not technically live on Zoom for anybody else yet, because this is kind of a trial run for us to see how it works. And, Julian and, Andy and Chris and I spent a little bit of time playing with this, getting it to be at the right angle. You can't see it in the box there necessarily, but it's literally focusing on 8 different people at the same time. So if anybody's at home watching at some point in time, they'd be able to see most of the contingency here at the front. And then eventually we'll figure out how best to integrate that home participation in a better way. So slowly but surely, we're getting there, but the materials that we voted on back in December are starting to come to fruition.
So what we see in the top right corner, not that I can see it well, but I can see my hand waving. That's what would be on the TV for people tuning in?
Since this is presenting, yes, but you would see that as one box, right? So if there's a bunch of other people engaged, they would be their own boxes, but
Right.
we're presenting as one box to the Zoom, essentially.
Okay.
You gotta be smiling.
So, but it'll be a really small smile when it comes to the box if there's a bunch of other people joining.
The Brady Bunch.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool.
It is kind of the Brady Bunch. So anyway, now let's move on to the rest of the agendas, and that is first for public comment. Is there anybody here that would like to speak to any items not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to consent agenda. Okay, Sean, do we have a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda?
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Chuck. I have a couple of minor adjustments that I missed in my first draft, so pardon me to make these minor adjustments as we go through. First things first, in the minutes for 6-9, somewhere in the new business section, section 3, it says we're in the process of doing new curriculum to K-1, and it's talking about illustrative math. Next year is K-2. And so that 1 should be a 2. That's one item. Then further down, you see that there, it says the presentation in its entirety is available on the website, but it says it twice. That's the next page down. And the first one that's not indented should be removed. That was a miss as I was updating it. The next one down is in personnel, section C2. It says voting that Juneteenth is not a paid holiday for paraprofessionals, and I said I suggested we change is not to will now be a paid holiday for paraprofessionals, which is what we voted on. So that's the adjustments for that minute packet. The next one is for the 6:15 minutes, and it just misses on behalf of, it misses the word chairperson at the end of the member minutes respectfully submitted. And so it's just the addition of chairperson to the end of that. So those 4 minor adjustments to the minutes so that they're not incorrect from a paraprofessional perspective, definitely, and otherwise aligned to what actually happened. And I apologize for missing those. We're working out the kinks as we go through things. Okay? Any feedback, questions, comments? No? All right, so it's as amended then now. So all in favor? All opposed? And it passes 6-0 as amended. All right, now let's move on to the reports. And we don't have a student at the current time, not until September or so. So let's move on. Dr. Stice, I don't know if you've got any additional updates besides your own update that you've got in the packet.
One quick update, we'd just like to share and acknowledge that on Friday, the 10th, we hosted our own Reading Special Olympics. Tara Hurley from Coolidge was really instrumental in getting it off the ground, and we wanted to really publicly thank her. We know it took a lot of effort, people coming together to make it happen, but she was really the driving force between organizing it and updating it, and it was wonderful. We had some of our own students being there as supports. We had one of our students being a DJ, and the community really did come together for an amazing day. And we were really grateful and look forward to doing it again next year. We've heard a lot of feedback during COVID. We weren't able to go to the regional Special Olympics, and the feedback has been we should continue to do it in Reading because it is even more special for the students and families to be able to be there and be in community with each other. And so we're just really grateful to Tara and all of the participants who were there.
Awesome. Thank you. I think Dr. Hardy has the night off, so we'll move past her, and Ms. Baton.
Actually, I wanted to update the school committee this evening on the status of Killam's MSBA eligibility period schedule of deliverables. And Mr. Robinson, you had recently asked for this update, so we wanted to be responsive to that. Provided to you this evening is an outline or a graphic showing the 8 different deliverables that are due to MSBA between now and February 2023. To date, we've accomplished deliverable number 1, the initial compliance certification was submitted by our town manager to MSBA prior to the deadline of July 1st. The second deliverable is the school building committee establishment, and in your meeting minutes this evening, it outlines the work that the committee did at our last meeting to identify 2 members to serve on the committee. The third and fourth deliverables are due on August 30th, and we've begun to gather the information. I spoke with Jen Flynn, our project coordinator, this past week, who provided me access to the online database where we can enter our information. Our educational profile requires 3 different sets of information. We've collected the first 2 set, and we're working on the 3rd set, which is a brief overview of the ways in which we can use the new Killam space, which will be brought back to you all and shared with you prior to submitting that information to MSBA. And then the 4th deliverable is the online enrollment projection. We heard our projections and forecasts from Dr. McKibben at our last meeting, and that data will be entered. The 5th deliverable is due in November, at the end of November. Joe Huggins and Kevin Kabuzzi have the information required, and they've also recently received access to the portal so that they'll be able to enter information. And once the information is entered, we'll review it as a group to ensure that it makes sense to all before we submit it. That deliverable is followed in November by that is due in November. That's the maintenance and capital planning. Then there's the local vote authorization in November, and then the feasibility study agreement in February. So this is just a very brief touch point of where we are in the process. I'm happy to answer questions.
Sure, Chuck, go ahead.
On number 4, did I hear you say you're going to enter the information that Dr. McGibbon presented at our last meeting? Is that just a matter of downloading that information into their model or whatever?
Yes, once I go online, I'll be able to enter the projections for the period of time they request. Before submitting any data, I will be sharing with, and we can discuss with the school committee, with the school building committee, but that's a holding portal for the information that we're entering.
And can I just ask another one?
Go ahead.
When does the school building committee start meeting? Is it within this schedule, or is it after this stuff is all done?
So I'll take that one.
Thank you.
It'll be part of my update as well, but I did have a conversation with Fidel today as he was filing the initial paperwork. And the only thing that's left for the initial paperwork, other than the select board election, which is happening on the 28th, is a chair has to be named of that committee. So sometime in July, that committee will be called to order to elect a chair, maybe a vice chair, maybe a secretary as well, so that the final paperwork can be put out that says, this is the school building committee, here's the chair. As to when they'll start the rest of the work, the previous expectation was they'll start the rest of the work once the full funding is approved after November town meeting.
Okay, I wasn't aware that the select board hadn't appointed somebody yet.
Yeah, they have to technically elect, so they have to have a 5-person election to elect that person.
Thank you. I'm good, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. And now we move on to Dr. Milczewski.
Mr. Weiss, may I also give you a very brief update on the Turf One project?
Oh, yes.
We're out of the ground, we're laying asphalt, the lighting is being installed, and soon we'll be pouring the field surface where it will sit and cure for 2 weeks. So we'll be seeing some very fast-moving progress all above ground over the next 2 weeks, so more to come. We're on schedule, so things are looking good.
On schedule, on budget?
We're doing great. We're within, we're within the funding appropriated. We had to make some changes related to the draining portion of the job, but we're still within the appropriated funds. Yeah.
And then in terms of timeline, we know one little holdup has
Thank
been
you.
I can take or do the scoreboard.
Yes,
Just that
I
we'll
can
continue to use the current scoreboard until the other scoreboard, the new scoreboard's up and running later this fall. So it looks like during the season, we'll be using the current in-place scoreboard.
So what our contractors have done is they've left the existing scoreboard wired. They've set up the placement and the wiring for the new scoreboard. When the new scoreboard arrives sometime in October, it will be installed, and then we'll decommission the current scoreboard. So we will be using the old scoreboard for a few weeks.
But maybe in the middle of the season, we'll be able to unveil the new scoreboard.
It'd be nice.
Yes, maybe
Okay.
at one of our big games, that would be great.
Okay,
To have the
Thank you.
lights ready for a lot of points lighting up on the Reading side. Don't need any lights on the visitor side.
okay. Sorry about
Thank you.
that. I thought you were done.
I was, yeah, I'm done.
Okay. Now, Dr. Milichewski.
Perfect. Just want to take a moment just to thank the entire community for a successful 21-22 school year. As we know, the school year concluded on Tuesday for a half day. We'd like to say that this year we know was filled with all different sorts of challenges, both expected and unexpected, from health challenges due to COVID-19, just some of the gaps we've seen in academic needs, social and emotional needs, and also just at a time where there's major staffing shortages. Yet, despite all the challenges, we think there's been so many accomplishments and successes across the district level, school level, classroom level, and student level. So thank you to the entire community. I want to take a minute to thank, first of all, some of our staff, to all the central office members who work behind the scenes to keep the district moving and keep our schools moving. Thank you. To all the principals. We've talked about this many times. Leadership matters more now than ever, and thank you to our principals for keeping our schools moving forward. To the teachers, the day-to-day work they're doing with our students, again, in a time when our students have had sort of at an all-time need. The secretaries for keeping our schools running with everything thrown their way. The paras, who have been time and time again described as the glue of our district in so many ways. Custodians, our buildings are in top shape, despite whatever's thrown at them, and our food service workers who are keeping our students healthy, nourished, and in school, ready to learn. So entire team of staff, just thank you to everyone who helped make an impact for our students this year. Also like to thank our community. We feel fortunate that both between our community members and our families, we've built great partnerships. We know it takes more than just the educators in our buildings to keep our schools moving forward. So thank you to all of those families and all of the community members who will partner with us to support student learning. And last but not least, want to thank our students. At graduation, I think for us that the common theme that we heard time and time again was the idea of resilience and just what our seniors had been through over the past few years. I mean, quickly, we all know masks, hand sanitizer, 3 to 6 feet distancing, Zoom, all of those things. But those not only impacted our seniors, we've seen that impact all of our students all the way through the system. So while we publicly acknowledged all of our seniors for their resilience, I want to take a moment just to thank all of the students for the ways that they showed up this year, ready to learn, ready to do their best and put their best foot forward. We told our seniors they were models for us in terms of resilience. I think all of our students have been models for our community how to be resilient. So again, thank you to all of those for a successful 21-22 school year, and thank you to our students for modeling resilience for us. We are eager and ready for whatever challenges may come in 2022, 2023, and I'm looking forward to kicking the planning off tonight and moving forward. So thank you.
Great. All right, let's move on to liaison, or any questions on that, anybody? No. Liaison subcommittee updates. We'll start on that end again, just to bring it back. Aaron?
No report tonight.
Okay, Sarah?
No report tonight.
Chuck?
No report.
Carla?
On June 12th, there was a Board of Library Trustees meeting. They did a reorg in about 2.5 minutes, so we should model that. And on June 15th, there was a Bylaw and Rules Committee meeting, and the town moderator said it was the most successful and productive meeting that he has had in a while. So kudos to all of them, all the new rules committee members.
Great.
What made it successful?
It was collaborative, and people were working towards the common goal of what they were assigned to do. That's my interpretation of it.
Okay,
We got a lot done.
got a lot done.
It didn't take 3 days like the average town meeting bylaw discussion, I think, is sort of the bar, right? So,
The bar's not very high.
yeah,
Not days, though, nights.
fair.
Nights into days.
All right, Sean?
Yeah, just quickly, so Tom and I, of course, participated in the last ARPA meeting a week ago tonight. We heard the bulk of the last of the requests, we did just get one more in the last few days, but heard the bulk of the final requests for the ARPA funding. We did review and recommend some funding to the select board, for the select board to allocate for the Mallet Psalms conservation area. It's a stormwater project, essentially a stormwater mitigation project. That project the project itself isn't time sensitive, but there are some grant applications in flight where having the town sort of commit some funding in advance of the grants being reviewed is looked upon as favorable. So we treated that one as time sensitive. Our next meeting is, I believe, July 13th, if I have the date right. I think it's 3 weeks from today.
Yes.
All of the members of the RAC will be coming back with their sort of proposals for how to allocate the remaining dollars, and we'll start the very difficult work of working through the disagreements that are sure to pop up. So,
Chuck?
Thanks, Sean. What are the remaining dollars?
it's about 3.8 million, give or take. Yeah.
Give or take 3.8 million, not counting anything that other things we've already given up may give back,
Sure.
right? So whether it's us with any new grants we get, whether it's, the 250,000 that was put out there for buying health supplies, that only about 80,000 or 88,000 has been spent. So there might be others that go back of what has already been appropriated. But that, as we know, that has to be set up and set aside by the end of 2024, right? So gives enough time for them to figure out what else. So it'll also be part of here's the next list, in case anything comes out from there. Okay, so just to finish on from the Killam related side, in your packet in the future schedule, you'll see that I have put in placeholders for the time being. Of course, those may adjust as people's schedules adjust and whatnot, but we do have a pretty hard commitment that we need to get the warrant article to the select board before the end of September. I think it's September 27th, but the packet has the date that's officially there. So the packet is currently the schedule is currently allowing for 2 meetings in that September timeframe for us to review the warrant, make adjustments, and then finalize it. And that includes potentially some public forum type meetings as well. We can decide not to do that if we want to, but I think it probably would behoove us to at least open it and see what people say as we go through that, and then we'll figure out how we get that done in time for that select board approval to be in the official warrant for November. If we miss that, the whole thing is done for the time being, right? So we can't miss that. That's critical from a delivery perspective. I just made a note to add to probably the August meeting, this educational profile that Susan mentioned we would review, which means that's probably the August 11th meeting. So we'll have to make sure that that's ready for the August 11th meeting. And the reason I brought this up in Liaison is because last Monday, not this past one, but the one before that, the Permanent Building Committee Appointment Committee met. So the town moderator, select board chair, school committee chair, and we met, and the current Permanent Building Committee chair was there too, but he's not officially voting. He was just there to advise and answer questions. We met to go over 2 things. One was the renewals for the Permanent Building Committee itself. And we had one current member step back to an associate and one associate step up to the regular member. And that regular member that stepped up has legal background, which is probably appropriate considering where we're going right now to keep any town legality issues at bay. So that was good. But we also had the school building committee appointment committee at that point in time. Our full slate that we nominated was approved. So from a school committee perspective, the action was to follow up with Sarah after the meeting. Sarah did want to be on it, so it's Sarah and Carla from a school committee perspective. And Sarah Levesque and Tom have put forward Joellen McGinty as the staff member from Killam that will be on there. It just so happens she's not a resident, but she is the staff member from Killam that will be on that. So the only pending related thing right now is for the select board election of their member to be in that meeting. And then finally, we have to kind of clear up that one portion of the thing about the body that's allowed to build buildings. And so Fidel and Tom and I were trading notes a little bit with what our legal team sent to us today. And he's just following up on that to make sure our I's are dotted and T's are crossed for our final submission, which is due by the end of July. So we seem to be in good shape for that, to meet that deliverable. Okay. Any questions on that? All right, so then let's move on. No out of order for a change. How about that? So we have the personnel, FY22 year-end personnel update. Michelle?
So I'm so excited to be here, and of course I brought a dashboard. And I think properly drove the entire leadership crazy all night with my fun facts. So now you guys got them. So to go through the dashboard, we have our initial head count. We are at 985 right now for a district. For the year, we have hired 167 employees. That doesn't take into account any substitutes or extended day teachers or helpers. Once you layer that number on, that's 143. We have hired 310 people in the district this year. And to put that into perspective, for every every week school is in session, that's equivalent to 7.75 individuals that we were bringing in. So I think that was, so we're able to get things stabilized that way. Overall, we were able to hire 107 subs. We increased the daily sub rate across the district to around 50%. If you remember in the fall, we started about 20 to 30%. And we are consistently ending at 50%. We increased our sub rates, our para rate, our daily para rate, and our long-term sub rate. We also were able to analyze and make some recommendations to shift staff to help with different openings. An example, we had an unexpected leave at Coolidge that we were able to put a math teacher, long-term sub in there, who was actually going to be at the high school. We also had a situation with a PE teacher. We were able to shift 2 individuals between Coolidge, the high school, and Parker to get some coverage there as well. So we have made substantial progress there. You can see for our current open positions, we have 25 currently that we're actively recruiting on. In our positions, we've already hired 34 people for the 22-23 school year. Part of the work that we've done in recruitment, we've created this recruitment dashboard to capture important work we're doing, as well as creating some transparency around the data. We have implemented compliant recruiting practices, such as status of candidates within various pools, automatic emails to candidate. We have streamlined and simplified the application process. We've hired key positions, including we just concluded 2 recent principal searches, as well as we've hired 4 of the 5 MECO coordinators, school adjustment counselors. We've shifted and matched candidates based on what positions and in building needs. If they're not, right now we have a couple school adjustment counselor searches going on, and if we're finding good candidates that applied for one position but aren't the right fit for that one, but that could potentially work for another, we're making sure those candidates are being seen so that we're getting the best talent despite what pool that they're applying for. We are continuing to work on hiring a diverse workforce and strengthening our candidate pools. To support this, we intended multiple recruitment fairs this year to engage passive candidates, increase the visibility of the district. As a result, we're able to draw in a diverse candidate who ended up progressing as a finalist in one of the principal searches. We also have, you can see the leave of absences that were non-COVID related, that ended the year at 78. We had 95 emergency COVID sick leaves. That number has stayed consistent since March. We're no longer tracking that once the state funding has concluded. The MTRS buyouts, retirement and buyout applications, would process 29 of those. This is whenever someone retires, it doesn't have to necessarily be a retirement from a Reading teacher, but anyone who has progressed through Reading, they come back to Reading, and we help them finalize all their information for retirement. Our terminations and retirements, so we have 76 resignations for this year, and we had 13 retirements. So this, right now, the 76 is actually lower than we were in 1920 for the start of that COVID year, where we found a lot of people stayed in place. So we are lower than that right now, which I found interesting. another one of my fun facts. So in 2020 to 2021, we had resignations that were effective on June 30th. We were at 106. Right now, resignations that are effective June 30th, we're at 30. So I am highly optimistic that we're going to come in lower than last year, which is great. We're in that delta of 76. So I'm feeling really good about where we're ending. That's a huge differential. I also know, Carla, that you're going to ask me if we have an exit interview. And guess what? We do. We also instituted a Reading Public Schools exit survey, and we have been collecting responses from our departing staff. This feedback is going to help provide insight into the employee experience at RPS and factors that may lead to an employee's decision to leave. It'll also inform areas for improvement for our current and future employees. Unfortunately, this is just a teaser, and you have to wait for my next update to get a report out of those results. You can also see that we have processed a significant amount of queries. We're at about 1,400 on the year. In terms of recognition, where we feel is a big area for opportunity, we now have both a new hire gift for people coming in so they can feel welcome, as well as a retirement gift for those leaving. This year, we also piloted the Milestone Reception that we had last school committee meeting and the Distinguished Teaching Awards. The reception was great. I felt like it was a great night, and it was good to see all the staff and families come together so that we could have that celebration. An area for opportunity that we're going to be working on is milestone recognition for those who are reaching a major milestone during their time here, such as the 10, 20, how can we more properly recognize them? So that's some of the things that we're going to throw around. My goal through my presentations this year was to bring transparency on the day-to-day work we're doing and the heavy volume we face, while making substantial progress on our strategic goals that move the district forward. In full disclosure, I am so biased on this topic, but we have the two of the most amazing, hardworking, incredibly talented staff working in HR, Kristen Cohen and Andrew Gutchess. Without them, none of this work would be possible. And we are so proud of the work we've done this year, and we're excited for the work ahead, and we are going to have quite the busy summer making some more progress.
Great update. Thank you, Michelle. Anybody have any questions? Carla, your question was answered already.
I already got you, Carla.
I'm pulling a Tom. I have two questions. In terms of the sub rates,
Yes.
and this may be just too much information to be gathering, and you said we're at about 50%
Yes.
now. What's a typical percentage in other districts? Like, are we 50%? I say, wow, well, that's 50%. We can do better, but is that typical?
I don't know numbers-wise. I
Sure.
do as part of so I happen to recruit and network wherever I might be. So I often get into conversations like this. I also do have a coaching relationship with Peabody High School, so I've talked to them as well. And it seems like it is really tough with the substitute rates, and people are across the board are having trouble with this.
Right.
The good thing, a major thing we've been able to tap into is really capturing the college student population. So when they're home for breaks and they're home for summers, we're getting them in here and we're getting them working. And so that has been a really good benefit of some of the stuff we've done.
Right, follow
Go
up?
ahead, yeah.
And one more quick one. Out of all the queries that have been done,
Yes.
were there any people that were rejected because of the information you got from the queries?
I can't answer that question.
Okay. Doing queries, is that I'm going to answer my question. Have we ever thought of doing a query that's not just based for Massachusetts, doing a state query, a countrywide query? It's not a.
We do the fingerprinting.
Yeah, okay.
To see if anything comes back that way. I can tell you if there is something that shows up on the query, regardless if it was last year or 50 years ago. I do personally review any single query that something is on.
I do queries, and I always wonder, is this just something that we do to make ourselves feel good? Do we really, do we really weed out people who we don't want here? And
I can tell you, I scrutinize over the queries, and if there's something that I feel questionable, I do, engage
Sure.
with another member of the leadership team, and we
Sure.
make the best judgment decision to put it, that's in the best interest of students in our district and safety.
Sure. I sometimes think if countrywide quarries are done, or they're not called quarries, but background checks are done for not a lot of money, it's a wider blanket, and potentially we could weed out people that we don't want in our district. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any further questions? So I'll just end with the positive, I guess. Well, I don't know if it's positive or not, but hiring 7.34 people, 75 people a day?
A week.
A week? A week? Even still, if it's a day, it would have been phenomenal. But a week is still, it's 2 people a day, almost 2 people a day. That's, you're constantly churning through applications, constantly bringing people in. There aren't many other organizations, there are no major corporations that have that kind of churn and that kind of turnover. So it's, with 1,000-person staff. Now, if you had 300,000-person staff, you would have that, right? But I think it's, and you've seen it from the corporate sector, so I don't know if you could compare how the churn and the turnover is, but it seems like it's pretty high relative to that. And I just want to, thank you and the team for all the work they did in that space.
Thank you.
Say one thing too, Tom, that's a really good point. Something we do monitor is not only the rationale on why there may be churn, but also in the roles too. Think about, is there certain things that we need to be doing in certain roles to make sure that we can retain staff? I mean, if you look at the dashboard and you see the types of roles that we've been hiring, we can tell where there may be areas where we have more work to do and things to be more thoughtful about as we move forward too.
Yep. Great. Okay. Thank you again, Michelle.
Can I just ask one more thing?
One more.
In terms of the substitutes, and you'd be able to verify this, for us increasing the pay for subs, brought more people in?
It's brought more people in.
So I guess it would be interesting to know at some point in time if that would bring more people in, right? So, thank you. Yep.
Chuck?
I don't know whether this is for Michelle or I think maybe Sean. Has the salary subcommittee met yet? The salary scale?
No.
Okay. Keep an eye on that, get going.
Yep.
I'm fascinated, really quick, I'm fascinated by Carla's point too here. What's that price point that would, get us a bigger yield or more candidates in compared to like neighboring districts? So I think we've started to think we thought about that earlier, but I think there's much more analysis that we could do to think about, is there a certain number that we could go up to that would really separate us from neighboring districts that would be sort of more bang for our buck? So great question, and I think something we toyed around with too.
The thing is, it's kind of a whole package conversation, right?
It's more,
It's not just the sub rate, it's other things as well, because the sub rate impacts other things, and we have to think about
Sure
those other
does.
things too, so. Okay, now we'll move on. Dr. Stice, I believe you get to present to us now. And you want to stay there? You don't need to get
Well,
up.
Allison is
Allison's gonna
presenting as well, so we're
Okay.
going to stand together.
Stand together.
So I know everybody always knows Allison Wright. She is the Director of Special Education and an amazing asset to this district. We've spent the last few years really trying to align our practice and our work with teams and families, but then also to define our separate roles. And as we mentioned last time, Allison is doing more of the special education, student related issues, and I'm looking more at systems. And with this new division, it's allowed us to really dive into some of our student services work. But what we're always focused on is the all means all and the consistency and communication. And so we were here with you just back in April. And this is a follow-up to that presentation and really talking about how Student Services is really focusing on students, staffs, and leaders to make sure that everybody is getting what they need in order to be safe, engaged, and making progress in their own areas. So last time, we linked our presentation to our district goals, and all of these topics you saw last time we presented, and we spent a lot of time going in depth. The one on this slide that that is new is the mathematics best practices. As you all know, we've done a lot of work around reading instruction. We're working very closely on executive functioning, and we've been able to add a layer of mathematics best practices in place at the middle school level in working with Sarah Hardy and Heather Leonard and their team. So we are going to be partnering with Crafting Minds to do a class for all special education teachers at the middle school level. We're hoping to be able to invite some of the general education teachers as well around how do you teach mathematics to students who have related disabilities. We're also worked with Susan and her team to be able to identify some funds to get some additional materials so that all special education staff at the middle school level have the right materials to teach the students at varying levels and whatever their individual entry points are. And finally, we're working with Heather Leonard and with Crafting Minds to really create a rubric and graphic organizer similar to what we are now using with reading. So what we have adopted is Dr. Orkin's graphic organizer for reading disabilities, where you chart all of the reading scores, and it really allows the team to focus in on what is the area of weakness and then match it to the right instructional profile. We're going to kind of create our own for math. What are the general education scores we should be looking at, and then what are the places in our standardized testing, and then what are the specific areas of intervention we need to address. So we're really excited about that work. Additionally, you've seen all of these points on this slide as well. Last time we were here, the one we wanted to highlight this time is CSTAG, and we've been working very closely with Jillian Sullivan, who's one of our social workers and our SROs. They have been trained in the comprehensive threat assessment training, and again, working with the central office team, we were able to identify funds that there will be a team trained at every single school for threat assessments. That will include the building principal, the social worker, the school psychologist, so they won't be alone. And we are also putting in a structure at the district level so that we have a response team ready to address any concerns at any building at any time. And so we are really excited to be able to add that in and start to implement that at the beginning of next school year. We do have, we are always triangulating our data in special education. We love data, and we are working really hard to make sure our teams have data, and that means we also have to be looking at data and really examining our practices. And when we start talking about the program reviews, that is a piece of it. But these are 3 additional pieces of information that we weren't able to present to you last time, since we had such a robust agenda of things. And we just wanted to mention that these are pieces that you will be continuing to hear about, that we are working on. I don't know if you want to describe them.
Sure. So the TFM is the tiered focus monitoring. So this is a 6-year cycle of review that the state, that we go through in special ed with the state. We just submitted the self-assessment for the civil rights component of the TFM, and they will be coming on site to do the next phase of that next year. That will be mid-year. Circuit breaker, we are in the midst of, we worked on it all day today with all the team chairs. It was a lot of fun. They had a lot of fun looking at data. So that is due this year. They give us a little bit more time. It's due on July 15th. So we are in full steam working on that. For the indicators, this is additional data that we need to provide to the state. We are working, there are 3 indicators that we're working on right now. And they're due throughout the summer, and that's data that we're collecting for students pre-K all the way through post-grad.
And so all of these data points really are helping not only to improve our systems and our organization. Circuit breaker is a great example of that, but also really where we need to focus our efforts to ensure we are really working with the Cpac and other agencies to make sure we have all the supports we need. All right, maybe we're ending there because now it won't click. You oh, there we go. Here is one of the ones, this was the title slide from the last presentation that we did. We do want to spend a little bit more time talking about our program reviews. We did want to say to people that we had anticipated wrapping this process up by this time, this school year, and it actually has not happened for a variety of reasons, one of which our reviewers, as they got into classrooms, they needed to come back several times, and they wanted to make sure they were doing a thorough job. Additionally, there were some other places where they felt like parents needed to have more of a voice and gave additional opportunities for people to be heard. So our timeline did shift, but we felt like it was much more important to have a thorough, comprehensive report than to rush the process.
So the clicker's not working.
He's doing something over there. I thought I made it work.
I had all sorts of problems with that earlier, so I wasn't surprised.
It didn't work, so as you know, we've been talking a lot about the program reviews, so just to review, we did, we completed the SAIL, the SOAR, the REACH, and the EMBARK program reviews, and as Jen said, we're working on finalizing that, the reports and releasing that. As Jen was just mentioning, we've started the stepping stones as well as the RISE program evals. Now, Jen has some data she wants to talk about. She'll be coming back.
When you switch your presentation sites, you should make sure you have all your data with you. Two things that we wanted to highlight here. So the SAIL, SOAR, REACH, and EMBARK program reviews all had a very similar process. They reviewed our files and student data. They met with staff, they met with families, they met with administration, and they did observations. And would come back to us with questions, maybe go back in again, and were very thorough. The RISE program review was a natural outcome of some of that work. They came to us and said, if you're going to do this, you need to start at the beginning, and there may be some vertical alignment pieces. So that process has started now with RISE, and it's going to be a similar process. Stepping Stones is a different program, and we are working very closely with the Bright Project and Lynna Williams to really cull through our data. And so when that gets reported out, you're really going to see the work we are doing to examine our attendance data and the impact that's having on the high school. And our new data person that is working with Sarah Hardy, Liam, has been absolutely amazing in helping us find the data. So I just wanted to give you a quick data point, what you're going to start to see. Some of the data is, this was pulled a couple of weeks ago, but at that point at the high school, we had 10,369 absences for students. Of that, students with 5 or more consecutive absences at the high school this year, there were 187. We also pulled the 8th graders because they're going into the high school. There were 2,539 absences total, and there were 56 students with 5 or more consecutive absences. So when we are talking about how do we support students with absences, this is a very different population than before the pandemic and what was serviced. Even the difference between last year and this year, last year they were able to support 24 students. This year the program has supported 31 students. So those are some of the data points you're going to see. It's a much more internal process, and we just wanted to call that out because we're working with the Bright Project to do that. Click.
So this slide is just, we had this in our last presentation. This is just really a reminder of all the how we're continuing to use data to inform and improve our systems and instructional practices. There we go. So just from the information that we've gotten so far from our program reviews, with those meetings with the evaluators, with some of the beginning drafts, we've seen some themes that are coming out, and they're listed up here. So we are all aware that we need to be working on and are aware that of the vertical alignment K through 12. So that's something that definitely came out as a theme. As well as the consistent instructional practices across those vertical programs. This also, working on we've talked about this before as well, our transition plannings across all of our programs, moving from different levels, from RISE to the elementary to middle and up. As well as continuing, we've done a lot of work on that professional development this year, but we're continuing to work on that professional development and support of our staff within the programs and across all of the buildings.
And so as you start to see the reports come out, we anticipate that you're going to continue to see these themes across. And it also really does impact supporting our paraeducators and our general education staff in implementing effective practices when students are in any area of the school building, not just in their substantially separate classrooms.
Oh, I can't see that from here. Glasses on. As you can see, this is a timeline that we've laid out for. As Jen was talking about before, it was our intention to have to be able to release these reports, but based on the in-depth information that we've been gathering from this, we want to do it in a very thoughtful way. So the timeline up there just shows how we're going to be breaking down the rest of the process. We're meeting with the evaluators additionally to continue to work on their summaries. We're working as a central office team to really think about how we're going to be rolling this out as far as the recommendations. As the staff come back in the fall, we want to be first starting, we'll be talking with the administration at the building level, so the principals and the team chairs, the program staff, followed by the program families, and then after that is when we'll be releasing information to the bigger community.
Some of what we also want to be thinking about is the state requirement for program reviews is 1 a year, and it can be an internal review. And Reading had not done an outside eval in several years. The last time was Dr. Orkin when she saw the middle school lead program. And we really jumped in with both feet, felt like it was very important for the district to have this information and to begin planning with it. But it also came to this bigger and bigger project than we had anticipated. But we don't want to lose sight of, we need a continuous review cycle to make sure we're really looking at everything. And we have some places we now need to review. We need to make sure we're focusing on the lead program. We'd love to do a special education reading instruction review, and then also looking at the Learning Center and what is happening there. So those are some of the other pieces we are looking for, knowing now the in-depth amount of work, which is probably why the state says 1 a year, don't jump in, but it was important for us to do that. So although we were hoping, I thought there was one more slide, but I know it. Although we were hoping to really talk about the program descriptions and what the recommendations were and how we were going to move forward, what we really would like to do is ask all of you for your feedback in terms of, do you have suggestions based on the timeline we rolled out and/or preferences of where you think we should start to look for continuing this work? Because we do know we're off timeline and really trying to make sure we're doing a thorough and complete job.
Jen, do you mind just quickly sharing too about why executive summaries too?
Yes.
Yeah.
So one of the pieces, originally we had thought, again, for the district not having gone through an in-depth process with outside evaluators, we thought we would be able to just release the full and comprehensive reports to everyone. What we realized, because our populations are so small, there's identifiable information for students and staff in there that really shouldn't be shared with the general community. So we went back to the program evaluators and said, this is awesome. We do not want to change the content of any of your findings or recommendations, but we are asking you to create executive summaries that can be shared with the public at large that will not identify specific students or staff. We feel really strongly that we want to maintain the confidentiality of everybody involved. So that is why we added that layer of executive summaries.
Okay, great. Chuck?
So I have a question, but I'll give you some feedback. I think you were looking for feedback on the timeline, and you said that the requirement is that we do 1 a year, and you've lifted 6 here. So I think that, which I always wanted. I've been saying that I thought it was good that we did look at all of them. So, I'm comfortable with as much time as you need to make sure we, look at all of them like you are, because you're not just looking at one. So, I think, October's fair.
Thank you. I do think one of the things we found by taking this big bite is the program reviewers were really able to look as a district and be really thoughtful of where do we need additional supports in order to make things run smoother that maybe you wouldn't see in the narrow focus of just one program. So there were tremendous benefits for doing this. It just was a bigger project than we imagined, and we wanted to do it thoroughly.
Can I just ask my question?
Sure, ask the question. We'll go to Aaron next.
So when the Cpac did their presentation, one of the bullets that caught my eye was in consultation in developing programs. And I didn't know what they meant by that. Is it, maybe I should ask them, is it a special ed program that like we've designed? I mean, when I first got on the school committee, there was just one program, and now, and it was all designed for keeping kids in the district and inclusion. And how do we monitor that? Is whether, there's something else on the horizon, whether we may need to come up with another program in addition to the ones we have. Who does that?
I think we do, and in concert with the team chairs and the parent feedback. We know some of our areas that are that we really need to develop. Not only the transition between all of our in-district levels, but really our transition planning for students is a big area that has really changed across the state, and making sure that we are taking students when they're 14 and focusing on where do you want to be when you leave high school and what does that look like. So we not only monitor our internal trends and data, we are also looking at the state and nationally to see. Some of the work that it's been very interesting for us is we continue to pull our data in terms of disability categories, compare them to us previously, and also compare them to the state. So we look at are we disproportionate in any categories? Are we over-identifying students of color? Are we suspending students with disabilities more than any other? Or why is it that Reading has more students that are coded not communication, but I cannot think of the neurological, thank you. Why are we almost flip-flop between neurological and communication, and what does that say about how we're interpreting the law and the definitions, and then we recalibrate with each other. So that's really some of the work that we do.
Thank you.
Erin,
I have a few questions.
go for it.
So in terms of the timeline, I think, from what I've heard, what people wanted was a timeline. So I think just by virtue of you laying it out, what is going to be expected to be shared when, I think people will find very helpful. So I appreciate it, and hopefully, others will as well. I'm impressed that we did so many reviews at the same time, and I'm glad to hear that you feel they were thorough and exhaustive, and I don't know if excited is the right word, but it's going to be really interesting to hear what we learn and what we can do with that for those programs. One question I have, by doing so many at once, obviously we don't want that to be our pattern.
Correct.
I assume. So how do you envision going forward, so that we're not going too long without reviewing one, but so that we end up in a more regular pattern of review?
That's part of our next steps, is to really talk about what's the refresh cycle. And I'm anticipating that when we get some of these program reviews really back and we're able to look at them in depth, we may find that there's one program that they're really saying, these are good, here are tweaks. This one really needs some support. And so as we do that, we need to build in, this one's probably going to need some frequent monitoring, this is going to need this check, and hopefully get on a cycle where it's more 1 or 2 a year than all at once. But I think we're going to have to use the data to help us drive what are those touch points, and add in those other pieces that we were talking about, really looking at lead. We really want to look at our reading data and see where we're making progress with the use of the graphic organizers, with Renee Lamaro doing very specific targeted interventions and trainings with teams, and what's happening in the Learning Center. Are we focusing on goals and objectives, and can we make some changes to really improve that? So that's all going to be part of our work with that refresh cycle.
Excellent. So I'm astounded by these absence numbers. And I assume we're not talking about family vacations, although maybe there's a sprinkling of that
There could be.
in there. I'm guilty of that myself. But other than that, we have stepping stones at the high school, what are we doing for these kids to get them back in school? I'm hoping that having school adjustment counselors will be one additional piece of that, but these
So
are
that's,
really high numbers.
it's staggering, which is why I wanted to actually share those numbers with you. I'm not as fancy as Michelle and her team with the dashboard. We'll get there. We are working on several things. So we have the committee working on attendance to really help us align our attendance practices across all the buildings with letters, parents outreach, all of that. And we may have a policy tweak recommendation here or there with that, as well as that subcommittee comes together. We are also partnering with Lynn Lyons. She has done a training on anxiety for all of our social emotional workers this school year. She's coming back sometime this week to really work with us to plan out what the next steps look like, but she will be coming for another training of any new hires that so all the MECO adjustment counselors, any new social workers, school psychologists, all the principals, to really start to build an understanding of what is anxiety and how do we support that. We are also partnering, and this is what I love about this community, people really do come together, as we saw with the adaptive sports. Erica McNamara and her team, they have now a new social worker on staff, and she is amazingly gracious and starting to help us do home visits and really connect families to outside providers for students who have anxiety and are trying to come back in. We're also doing some work with doctors around when you sign the home hospital tutoring form, it actually means they can't leave their house. So if students are out at the mall and doing some of these other things, then we need to have a different program. So we're really hoping that as we put all of these steps in place and have real firm data cycles at the district level and at the school level to really start picking apart who's out, what do we need to do, how are we tracking it, that we can start to shift some of these down, get families and students the support they need, be consistent in our practices, and look at stepping stones. When stepping stones started, they had many students with concussions. I think they had 2 this year. That's not our primary focus, an area of need, which is why we added stepping stones into this to really think about, are we supporting students who are struggling to get to school?
So that all sounds fantastic. It makes me think, particularly when you talk about the anxiety training with those particular staff, do we do any training around what anxiety looks like just for all of our teachers? Is there anything around that? I feel like anxiety, like it's the number one thing I've heard about this year. But do all our staff know how to recognize it and support it when we do get the kids in the building?
That's part of our PD discussions we're going to be having over the summer as we start to build what are our priorities. And I believe, as Dr. Hardy mentioned, we're also not only looking at creating this amazing PD calendar so we can forward plan, but also saying there are going to be through lines in all of our PD for the people who present internally or externally. So one of them is the social emotional learning. So if we're having math PD or reading PD, we want you to make a direct, explicit connection to social emotional functioning, executive functioning, and there's one more I can't think of right now, but that's all going to be listed out as part of that package that Dr. Hardy's working on with her learning and teaching team, because it's so critical. And I think as Dr. Milichewski mentioned earlier, as we were sitting at graduation, we were struck by the speeches of our valedictorian and salutatorian and said, this is the right work we're doing. We just need to keep doing it.
Thank you.
Aaron, I have just 2 follow-up things. One is the idea of the attendance challenge is a statewide and nationwide challenge that I know is impacting us here at home significantly too. Just want to couch it to say this is not just us who's facing this right now. Sure. And I think districts are scrambling on what to do. Second, I really appreciate that last point, thinking a little bit about what some of those structures that we can put in place to support, students with anxiety. I think one of the things we think about the idea of training, yes, you can put, one-off trainings in place, which we need to do for some foundational basic understanding. But we feel like a major point of training for us is having the access for our staff to school counselors in every building and increased staff is just that job embedded ongoing, resource for staff to be able to go to help troubleshoot. And I think that's, in addition to, one-off trainings, it's also that consistent ongoing support that we think will be really valuable. As you're alluding to, just we've seen a significant increase in anxiety, and I think that having that support will be invaluable for our staff.
And we've actually formed a social emotional learning committee that has members from every grade level, middle school, high school, elementary, pre-K, and clinical staff is included, our school psychs, social workers. There's a couple principals on the committee. Erica McNamara is on the committee as well. So we're really looking at what social emotional supports are we providing to all students across this district, and are we doing it consistently with the same focus areas. We don't want to just say, oh, middle school did this, and then when it's the high school, they do something different. We want to make sure there's a through line and a connectedness, which is one of the reasons we're anchoring some of our direct supports in Lynn Lyons.
Sarah.
Just a couple quick clarifying points. In terms of wrapping up the RISE and Stepping Stones reviews, will those be done in time for kind of the time
We're
you've laid out?
anticipating they're going to be done in time. They've started RISE already. We may not have the executive summaries, but we're hoping by the September, October rollouts, we'll be able to make sure they're caught up.
And then the plan for doing the lead and special ed reading instruction and learning centers, are you anticipating being able to get those done earlier, like next year? Just in terms of the interconnected piece, I think we're going to continue to see those themes.
I think, so those are our next focus areas. One of our next decision points we'll be talking about as a team this summer is, do we take on all three of those as a group, or do we pull out and say, let's do lead, save the other two for the following year? Some of that's really going to depend on what are all of the results and where are those checkpoints. So it's a very interconnected puzzle right now. We wanted to really articulate, though, we haven't lost sight of all of this. We're trying to keep it all.
Okay, thank you.
Sean?
Two quick ones, just maybe a follow-up on Sarah's first question. I'm just trying to understand the dependency on RISE. Is it that the reviewers can't complete the 4 that are sort of further ahead until they complete the RISE review, or is it that our preference is to, or is it driven by our preference in terms of how we present them, I guess, is the question?
No, it was literally, the RISE review came out of some of their initial findings, and as they were getting into it, they said, I really think you need to do this. We said, we agree. We got the contract out as fast as we can. We started working on it. We literally ran out of school year. So they started reviewing, started talking to people, but haven't had enough time to spend in classrooms and doing conversations with families and staff to do a thorough enough job to, they need to finish it in the fall.
Yeah, so I think I understand the timeline with respect to the RISE part. I guess what I'm asking is the completion of the 4 that are further ahead contingent on?
Oh, no.
Okay, it's just that we want to sort of wait until, well, we also need to wait to the fall to start socializing,
Correct.
Right.
So we're assuming by the time we're really talking about mid-September and really meeting with families, that RISE should be pretty much completed by then, and we can kind of catch them up where we're going with everybody else. But we're not waiting on the ones that are done for RISE.
So, okay, so theoretically, if when we get back in the fall, the intensity of RISE, for instance, is more than we expect, takes a little bit longer, we still could and should be ready to move forward with the other 4 programs?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes. We're not going to hold anything up waiting for RISE. We need to move and make sure we're continuing to approve the programs.
Perfect, thank you. And then the other question was on the, one of the earlier slides, you talked about the threat assessment teams. So principal, social worker, psychologist makes sense as that threat assessment team. And historically, most of the types of threats that we're talking about probably are very familiar to the principal and the psychologist. But are we, is there anything, is there any sort of lighter touch training for, for staff and teachers so that they can identify students who maybe haven't risen to the sort of level of attention that team is aware of them?
that is exactly the work of that social emotional learning team we have going. We are very worried as a district about we know a lot of the students that have acting out behavior that are visibly shaken or are really struggling and asking for support. But we also know there are students who are coming to school every day, turning in their work, and who are extremely anxious either when they get home or just kind of hiding it underneath. And we want to make sure we're supporting all students in that way. So that's a lot of what we're looking for. What's our curriculum, what's our assessment, and what's our training for staff to be able to pick up on some of those more subtle signs.
Good, thank you.
My turn. So first things first, I guess you asked about the timing and the rollout and any feedback on that. And my initial, view on it is you're taking a methodical approach. It needs to be done the way it's done. You need to communicate with the members that need to be communicated with. It's fair to communicate with the families, and the staff and before it's public and all that kind of fun stuff. I think that the logic of it is great. And the timing is, of course, because it's around the school year, right? But the challenge I see in that is how does that play into our conversations over the summer with regards to strategy, goals, objectives, et cetera? So is there a way, using the July timeframe of the central office planning and going into our August strategy offsite, that there's a preview of some sort that this body can have or that we can have as part of that August 4th meeting, that we can get a little bit more of an insight into what exactly you're looking at from a program structure change or things along those lines?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So great, thank you. And I just want to clarify then that the report distribution in terms of when it will be available for the public is essentially at the Cpac timeframe, and that's the executive summary views because it's obfuscated at that point in time about who the students are and who the staff are.
Yeah.
So that's the October timeframe and beginning of October, give or take, using Cpac calendar the second Tuesday of October.
That's it.
Okay. I want to dive in a little bit more into this consecutive absences.
Yeah.
I'm a believer in data, but garbage in is garbage out. I'm very curious how we're tracking the type of absence, right?
Great question.
Is it COVID absence from being COVID sick? Is it COVID absence from being COVID quarantine? Is it anxiety absence and they just don't want to come to school? School avoidance? What is our system for capturing the reason for absence and understanding that it isn't just related to the medical standing of issues that we've been having for the last 2 years and is really, truly an anxiety-driven or other school avoidance-related absence issue?
Perfect question. One of the first things I do want to say, and this is where Liam was so critical for us, the first time we did this, we ran it by 15 or more absences. And it was a staggering number, as you can imagine. But when we went to compare our data set to when Stepping Stones was originally conceived, we realized, wait, they did 5 days, we did 15. This doesn't, we're now talking apples and oranges. We need to go backwards to get to the 5, but we'll be sharing that bigger data. What we found, is that we need a more consistent
data capture
process of how we are coding absences, because what we are literally doing now, led by Lynna, is the high school's going through all the guidance counselors by hand. These were COVID absences. These were hospitalizations. These were, we called the parents and they went on vacation. And so what we found is some schools coded why students were absent. When they hit the 5-day mark, they went back and marked it COVID. That's one of the procedures we're going to be working on this summer with the attendance committee. How do we track it? And then what are those touch points so we're not getting to the point that this is a by hand activity, because it should be happening regularly at the district level and at the school level to catch those errors.
So long story short, right now, we don't know how many of those 5 are COVID-related, non-COVID-related, anxiety-related, other things.
When we do the final report, we'll be able to do that. They're still going through literally by hand to call out which
Tracking back to all the emails sent by parents, and yeah, that's a bit of a challenge, okay.
Yeah.
Good thing Liam's on board to.
He's been an absolutely amazing addition.
You away from them.
I'll be meeting with Liam soon, so. Okay, so the other thing I had in mind, or as I was questioning about things here, is you talked about math and Crafting Minds math, and once again, we hit middle school. My perception, and I don't know if it's reality, so this is my question, when are we going to take that to the elementary school? Whether it's Crafting Minds math or Crafting Minds reading, right? So that we can capture it earlier, and we're not remediating 5 years of problems, but maybe, 2 or 3 years of problems. How can we bring that down a level?
That's a great question. Crafting Minds reading is absolutely across the district. And we are really seeing results, which is why I'm excited for the special ed reading instruction review. I think we are seeing students making progress in substantially separate programs that are having different reading approaches, to just our staff's understanding of all the components of reading and what we're targeting and why, which is going to improve student outcomes. So reading is across everything. One of the reasons we wanted to start with the middle school with math is elementary's taking on a couple of really big lifts with the new reading program for general education, which we are training all special education teachers in, and we're doing some specialized training for the special education teachers to know how to accommodate. And also the math rollout that they've been doing at the elementary level, really making sure that the same thing's happening. Special education teachers are going to have specific training next year that they are able to understand and accommodate that. One of the places that we were really seeing and was identified at the school level, Sarah Marchant was a huge advocate for. The special ed teachers are asking, how do we do this? And we felt like we know the elementary school's getting a lot of training and support in PD in both reading and math. We wanted to really do that as well at the middle school level. We also were able to work with Heather Leonard to identify that the middle school may not have all the materials that they need in order to really be accommodating it. So working with Susan and her team to get those materials in the hands of every special education teacher is why we chose to start there with that. Once that graphic organizer is ready, it will be a district-wide rollout. If there are concerns in math, here's what it's going to look like, and here's the data that we need to examine.
Do we anticipate that being different by level? I mean, the graphic
Yes.
organizer we have with Ms. Orkin is it's normed to normed testing, right?
Yes.
So those tests have normed values, they have normed things. This, as I understand it, is not going to be normed necessarily. It's more to our own assessments.
It's going to be both. So we're going to use some of our in-class and screening data, but then we are also going to look at that with the Woodcock-Johnson, the key math, what are some of those other assessments? Because if you are worried about a student's math, what is the difference between a fluency issue in math and a naming speed issue and the impact of that? So we're really working closely with Heather around what are our standards and Crafting Minds about what are the assessment protocols. So we're really excited to have that because, again, it just builds our staff's capacity because our staff is amazing at doing the assessments and implementing and believing in children. We need to make sure we're giving them the right tools to do that.
Great, thank you so much for the clarity of the answer there, I appreciate that. Okay, anybody else? Thank you, ladies.
All right,
Amazing
thank
job
you.
as always, I appreciate it, we appreciate it.
We'll give you back your broken
The
clicker.
clicker doesn't work, so I don't think we're going to need it anyway at this point in time, so we can kind of stop the share over here and see everybody see themselves in the big picture. Okay, so we will move on from there, and we will move on to the year-end update and budget transfer. So, Susan, you want to slide over? It looks like the camera's not quite recognizing you. Although it's not going anywhere but us, so it's just for practice for the time being.
Well, thank you, and I'm really pleased to share with you the end-year projections. Of the $49.7 million appropriation, we're expected to meet all financial obligations, and the fiscal year with a balance of approximately $55,000. Now, I'll speak more about that approximate balance in a moment. What I wanted to do was highlight the fact that we have, and as the report shows, we've been monitoring the budget throughout the year and identifying projected savings early. We've then used those projected savings to allocate to areas that will support our students and fall within our overarching priorities. Our priorities are to improve academic outcomes for students and improve their performance and growth, support student social and emotional needs, and enhance adult practices and streamline operations. Throughout the year, we've allocated fund balances as identified to be most responsive to students' needs, and by doing so, we feel as if we've positioned ourselves very well for next year. In order to, or some of the ways that we've supported those three goals, and I'll just list them not in any order. We've delivered February and April vacation academies. As Dr. Milichewski mentioned, leadership matters. So the district has, through Dr. Milichewski's leadership, developed and initiated principals mentoring and coaching programs in partnership with the Center of Leadership at Salem State College. We've purchased ARC core literacy materials, also supported through ARPA funds, and for that we're grateful to the town. We've been able to hold and sustain our 5-year renewal of student and teachers' devices and smart boards. We've been able to hire a mid-year 0.2 FTE for the Stepping Stones program. We're developing crisis prevention and risk assessment programs and training for our mental health clinicians. There are a number of ways in which we've supported our students throughout this year and again have set the stage for a successful next school year. The ways in which we've met our students' needs will require transfer of funds from the special ed cost center and a slight transfer from the district-wide account to the regular day cost center. I wanted to first, though, speak about the end-year projected balance with a $49.7 million appropriation and projecting a $55,000 balance. That's quite specific. And so I wanted to point out that as we close the end year, there are a couple of tasks, housekeeping tasks, that we'll be involved in that may fluctuate that balance slightly. One is to audit the expenditures of every account to ensure that the expenditures really have been charged to the right cost center. And this is part of DESI's chart of accounts compliance. Although we review that carefully when we issue requisitions, there may be a small variable. It's part of an end-year closing process. Also, there are encumbered purchase orders, and as we close those encumbrances, there may flow more towards an end-year balance. I expect, though, the $55,000 to be right within the ballpark. I wanted to mention, too, that in clearing the end year, we went back in time and looked at open purchase orders that were still encumbered from 2015 through 2021. And with the town's finance department's help, we've been able to close those purchase orders, releasing $338,000 back to free cash. So in addition to whatever funds are available in the school department's budget at the end of the year, plus those $338,000, all of that will flow into free cash where it will be certified with the town accountant and Department of Revenue and available for future distribution to town departments. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. I'm keeping this presentation brief. There's a lot of detail in the report. One last note, though, I'd like to thank Mr. Weiss for pointing out some errors in the report. If I can just share with you that the illustrative math materials that we've purchased this year were not only for grades 3 through 6, but also K through 2, which will be the rollout of next year's materials. And the other correction was, and I printed out a new report for you, on the special revenue fund page, on the very last page, the very last line incorrectly noted the special ed donation fund balance. The balance should be $319,000. My apologies for missing that.
Sure. Thank you, Susan. This is a great presentation. And I read the narrative about the POs, which I think is very interesting. So what was the process that you went through to determine that, you know, that even say something was back to 2015, we might not still need it? How did you determine that?
Well, when we run a series or a certain series of year-to-date reports from Munis, we've noticed that the encumbrance line for certain accounts was inflated. We drilled down to take a look at it and noticed that in some ways that encumbrance line impacts the balances that we see. And it's more of a nuisance in terms of reviewing the reports and using Munis as a tool for forecasting and projecting. So we made a concerted effort with the town's help to compile the list of all open purchase orders as far back as we could go, review them, ensure that there were no outstanding invoices that hadn't been paid, and to close them so that those funds could be made available for future use. We, at the close of a fiscal year, the school department cannot go back and use prior years, especially purchase orders from 2016.
That's why I'm surprised that
Yeah.
they were still around.
And there were many purchase orders, and some with very small balances, but they add up. These smaller balances add up, and I'd rather have those funds available in free cash for future use than be locked in an encumbered PO.
Thank you for doing that. That's,
You're welcome. I thank the town for their help. They needed to go in and help us close these POs.
I'm sure they thank you for the $338,000 too. Can I ask a question? Just from a pure accounting perspective, just to make sure I understand it. So the only place that this $338,000 appeared previously were in encumbrances lines attached to particular cost centers.
Yes.
And so now those encumbrances are zeroed, the appropriate ones are zeroed out, and we expect the certified free cash number to be benefited by this $338,000. But there's no other impact on revenue lines or any of our expense lines or anything like that, correct?
No.
Okay. Okay. Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Erin?
I just want to say how much I appreciate you combing through things so carefully to uncover that to the benefit of the town, but also that even just the projected balance to be that low it's much lower than what we're normally giving back, and I appreciate that because I can't stand when we get back money. I would much rather use it for the schools. So I appreciate how thorough you have been this year at really looking at every nook and cranny of our budget and really approaching things creatively. And thank you.
I'd like to thank our team because it's just not one person. The work that everyone has been involved in order to address these 3 goals and priorities, it's been an amazing team. We're all working towards the same thing. And I'm really pleased that we've been able to capture some of these savings early enough in the year, I think, to really make a difference. I'm so excited about next year. I mean, I think that we are well positioned to really take off and do some amazing things for our students. So I'm looking forward to it.
Can I just make one more, just the PO thing, just, yeah.
I'm going to come back to that too, so that's okay.
So I think we should, when the auditors are in here, it should be pointed out to them that you found that, and if they are supposed to know municipal finance and should have pointed that out to us, I would think. So I think they should be made aware of that.
We're audit committee members.
Me and Carla.
I'm serious. I mean, they should have caught that.
Yeah, that's coming up in the next few weeks, I think, once it gets scheduled.
Okay.
The other point that I'll mention too is that I talked a little bit about year-end closing and some of the things we do to ensure that all the finances are in the right place, and it might shift the balances a little bit. We do comb through purchase orders carefully, and by September, before we really start with the budget development process, by the end of September, I typically have all of the prior year's purchase orders closed so that those dollars can be included in free cash for the next budget development cycle. So I just wanted you to know, going forward, we'll be doing this as a routine end-year task.
So I'll just echo the thanks as well, and the excitement. I like the excitement, because that's definitely there. There's so much in here. This is such a meaty presentation that you put together. And so I just wanted to call a couple of those things out, or question a few of them, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. First, I appreciate the grant summary, right? And the FY20, FY21, FY22. And I noticed the asterisk next to Idea 240. And it seems like we rolled that my understanding of it, and this was my question, is we rolled somehow with the state, we rolled the 40,000 into FY21, but we're still accounting for it as FY20. We have to spend it by the end of September of this year.
That's right.
So the leftover number that's projected as a balance, that $1,003, we're going to do our best to spend by the end of September of 2022.
This actually, the $1,003 that was left over at the end of FY20 was the final balance at the end of FY20. We didn't spend that.
Oh, okay.
And it was returned, or in fact, it wasn't claimed by us, so we missed that $1,003.
Does the same apply to the Title I grants, or do those roll over from year to year?
The Title I grants have,
Title II and Title IV as well?
exactly, they end on September 30th, and we are working very hard to apply those title grants to help us through the balance of this year and during the summer. The difficulty with the title grants is that they are very specifically focused on certain schools, and there is a possibility that we might not be able to deploy those title grants by the end of September.
They're not able to be used for things like extended summer or things like that, that might be appropriate for the population it's trying to fit?
Yes, Dr. Hardy and I have been talking about that along with Heather Leonard, so we're going to do our best to support the summer programs with these grants. The use of some of these grants are so limited that we really have to be careful that we stay in compliance with the use.
Okay.
And I'll mention too, if I can, for a moment, to go back to 240, that $40,000 was in FY20, was to be used for equitable services. And we were able to roll forward most of that into FY21 and would be used for equitable service spending.
And that's going to zero for
Yes.
FY21?
That's right.
So we will have spent every red cent of that one. Jen's like, let me speak on this.
This makes me so happy. For the first time, we have an amazing partnership with Austin Prep around this money. And a tremendous shout out to Team Chair Alana Schoen, who's really helped us write service plans and partner with Austin Prep. So all students at Austin Prep, irregardless if they live in Reading or another town, but they go to school within the confines of Reading, are getting services through that equitable shares. It was a very high anxiety point for me originally because we couldn't partner with Austin Prep to spend the money, and this year has been absolutely amazing. And Susan and her team have been great when we say, okay, we've got $25,000 worth of tutoring that needs to happen. What are we spending down? Where does it come from? It is really been exciting to watch how we are coming together to define the processes to do that. But it is our goal to get down to zero with those equitable services funds. On top of the equitable services funds, there's also resolution funds. There was a lawsuit with the state, and certain communities got more money. And that had a very, very finite timeline. We were able to spend that down completely this year. We will get a little bit more next year, but I'm confident we'll maintain those timelines going forward.
Okay, great. And so to that end, I was looking at the spending deadlines. It seems odd to me, but maybe COVID is the answer, so it might be a layup question, that FY20 and FY21 both have the same spending deadlines. Is that because of COVID?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that, I suppose, from a federal government perspective. Let us keep the money for one more year. I just also wanted to call out, I know we're going to hear more about this as the summer goes on, but the reinvestment of some of the money for this year into the leadership development program with Salem State. It's a bullet on this thing, but it's a hugely important bullet that we've heard about all year, and the ability to reinvest some of that money there and set that program up next year for our principals across the gamut is phenomenal. I appreciate the creative thought that the team put in for that as well. So that, I just want to, I think we'll hear more about it, as I said, in July, but then I want to move on to the revolving accounts a little bit, because a couple of observations there. One is, it looks like our extended day program is going to be healthy again, or is healthy again. Is there anything we need to do in that regard to prepare ourselves for next year, assuming a more normal year as we work our way through this pandemic, from a staffing perspective, from a program perspective, from a, community outreach perspective in terms of maybe other people or programs or companies might want to come in and participate in the extended day program as well. Is there anything we can do there or planning to do with some of that rollover funds?
I think we first need to start with the recruitment and the staffing piece. We could certainly expand the program if we have more staffing. We enrolled enough students to meet our staffing schedule, but we could certainly take in more students if we had the staff. So I imagine that Chris Nelson will be working with Michelle Roach in our HR department in order to make that happen. I think that extended day also needs some support staff in their office. They had 3 staff members in prior years, and we pulled back on the program. Now that it's developing a healthy rebound, I think it's time to take a look at that.
So I raised that, A, for that reason, right? Is it time to look at that and see if we can rebound the program? But also B, that if the demand comes back to where it was 3 years ago, and I think the committee can remember, 3 years ago, the demand was so high we could not meet it, right? And we had to go out and outsource some programs. So I would rather be proactive a little bit and thinking about it from a program perspective in that way if we can. It may not be the right time, it might be another year away, but something to make sure that we're planning what's going to happen with that program, because it was huge. It was huge pre-COVID. And we didn't have space. We had parents here at the meeting saying, you need to expand this program, we need more space. So whether it's a collaborative and build out with YMCA as we're doing over the summer, or other things like that to continue to build that program back up again, I just want to encourage creativity there as we think about that.
That's a great point. And Chris Nelson actually spoke with me several months about how he was looking forward to re-engaging in that model of contracting out, bringing in special programs and events for students. So this might be time.
Okay.
Tom, on that real quick, I just thank Chris publicly too, that, this past year, Chris has, with his staffing shortage, if you walk by at the end of the day, you'll find Chris out
Yeah.
playing kickball, going down slides, like out there with the kids on the ground level, just because of some of the staffing challenges that we've seen too. So I love the visionary piece. I think Chris would be thrilled to get back to some of that.
Yes.
I think I just want to also acknowledge just what his leadership has been like this past year, as a result of the staffing shortages felt in Exeter today.
Yes.
Right. So my other observation is it appears, and I could be wrong here as well, that we have reduced the kindergarten offset by 2.25, or 225,000, give or take, for this last year, to keep the kindergarten revolving account up at 621 as opposed to at 400,000, 396, whatever the case number that we built the models on.
Yes.
So we were able to bring some of that back and reduce the offset appropriately.
We offset the account by the total amount of tuition received this year. We did not have to tap into any of the balance or the carryover, so it's essentially a wash. In this way, it will help us perhaps bridge the gap that we need to.
Every little bit will help.
Offer full-day K.
The 338 we gave back might help too.
Right.
I'm looking at every potential way that we can help solve that problem. And my last question, and I think we talked about this, maybe one-on-one or otherwise, the school lunch program has an extremely healthy balance,
Yes.
probably too healthy.
Yeah.
So is there anything there that we can highlight or plan to present, over the summer or going into next year about what the plans are for that program as well?
That's right. We can prepare a plan for the school committee. I will share with you that I spoke with the director at DESE and shared with him, or talked more about the fact that we were ending the year with several months over and above what is typical and what DESE would like us to. Usually it's a 3-month balance. And he shared with me that many other districts are in the same situation as Reading, and that DESE understands that given the fact that we've been offering free lunches and the reimbursement rates have been higher, they assumed and understand that our balances would be so much higher than typical. What they are looking for, though, is a plan of action, and Dr. Milachewski and I are working with Danielle Collins, our food service director, to prepare such a plan, and we have a lot of really excellent ideas.
Great. And next year, the free lunch is dropping back to the regular free lunch as opposed to everybody getting free lunch. Is that right?
We understand that there's a vote that's coming up sometime this month that will clarify for us. At this point, most communities are counting on the fact that we're back to a fee meal program, so there'd be a free and reduced lunch process.
Do you have an update on that?
Yeah, there's legislation which appears to have bipartisan support, which would expand the eligibility for free and reduced price lunch for at least the next year. But the expectation is that the free lunch for everyone is going away.
So they might increase or decrease or increase the
income
level
threshold.
to be qualified for it.
Yep.
Okay, so it might be a higher level going forward than what it was pre-COVID, but it won't be COVID levels where everybody's getting free lunch.
That's right.
Okay. Thanks, Sean, for that, and thank you, Susan. I think before we move on, we have a few motions, though.
We do. I move to approve the transfer of $937,448 from the Special Education Cost Center to the Regular Day Cost Center.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Chuck. Any further discussion?
Take the number right? Yeah,
Numbers right?
just making sure the number was right, yeah, okay.
Numbers right.
All right. All in favor? All opposed? And it passes 6-0. All right, and the second one?
I move to approve the transfer of $4,459 from the district-wide Technology Cost Center to the Regular Day Cost Center.
Do I have a second? Seconded by Carla. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? And that passes 6-0 as well. Okay, Susan, thank you.
Thank you.
And the next item on our agenda is the school calendar update and approval, which Dr. Milczewski, I think you're going to take.
Yep, I'm stepping in for Dr. Hardy's been working closely with our teachers union on this. So tonight, we're requesting a change to the approved 2022-2023 calendar in the form of adding additional early release day to elementary, 12:45 dismissal on Wednesday, November 16th, 2022. The rationale for this is that since in the 2022-2023 calendar, there's one less half-day than this past school year. The reason being that Veterans Day this upcoming year will fall on a Friday, so we'd lose that half-day. Because we lose that half-day, obviously, then that triggers, challenges in making up the time required for contractual prep time. It also falls in time when the teachers are working on report cards and conferences, so it makes it especially complex. So since the calendar was approved earlier this year, we've been working on any other potential ways around adding an additional half-day. And both the administration and the teachers union that we were working with felt that this is the best solution for us to be able to meet our contractual requirements and also minimize disruption on students. So you'll see that what we're requesting is, again, to shift Wednesday, November 16th to an early dismissal at the elementaries at 12:45.
Okay. We'll start with the motion, and then we'll have any discussion.
Move to approve the updated 2022-2023 district calendar as included in the packet.
Second.
Seconded by Chuck. Okay, so just a point of clarification, I think there's two calendars in the packet. One is the new one. Really, the only change that I see is the second page of that.
Correct.
And the other one is the old one, which has the previous second page. So if anybody was confused about that, they could put that out there so everybody's on the same page. So the only difference appears to be the fact that in that elementary early release days at 12:45 section on the second page of the calendar, you now have November 16th, 2022 added. And that was not in the previous version. It just so happens that the other two are open house days, and they have special asterisks on them on the previous page, but this one does not. But it is in that separate page instead.
Can I say something on that too? So you see Sue in the back of the room very quickly on in her time has said that she's very willing to take on making this a little bit more visually appealing. We tried to work on that this year. I don't know if our efforts were as successful as we wanted them to be with the different symbols and colors and suns, triangles. So I think Sue has made a public commitment to trying to work on that. So hopefully you'll see a revised version. If you have any ideas or feedback, we want to support Sue with that, let her know. But we realize that this is not the most reader-friendly way. So we apologize for that, and thank you for your feedback on that, both committee and community.
Aaron's like,
Please.
it's hard, there's so many
miss
different.
the colors. I'm like, to me, it's just easy to look at blue and be like, all right, blue's no school, or whatever it is. But this, I'm like, okay, it's a square. Where's the square?
Shooting at a sun.
I find this a little dizzying. But.
Okay, I think I took us off track a little bit there, so I'm sorry. Any further discussion on the change to the calendar?
No.
Chuck?
Oh, I was voting.
He's like, let's move on already. All right, so seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the change? All opposed? And it passes 6-0. Okay, so now we need to take an item out of order and temporarily adjourn once we do. So, Sean, let's do the out of order first, please.
I move to take out of order item G1, executive session.
Give a second. Carla? All right, no discussion. All in favor?
It's a roll call.
No, we haven't called for the executive session. This is to take it out of order first. Okay, and that passes 6-0. Okay, so now the motion to move into executive session.
Move to enter into executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel and to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel, specifically the superintendent, returning to open session in approximately 30 minutes.
Do I have a second on that? Seconded by Sarah. All right, now this is a roll call vote. So we'll start at the end. Aaron?
Yay.
Sarah?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Tom? Aye. We will return in about 30 minutes. School committee back to order at 10:16, returning from executive session. And we'll start with our motion.
I move to approve $195,700 as the superintendent's salary for the 2022-2023 contract year. Also to amend Section 9 in the contract to strike the tuition reimbursement and provide a $2,000 reimbursement for local travel, and update Section 8 to eliminate redundancies with the new Section 9.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Sarah. Okay, any further discussion? I think we'll just express appreciation again, Tom, for the year. And, you know, as we work through this, I think we come to a good amicable agreement on where to go here. And we look forward to FY23 and then budget for FY24. So time flies, we're having fun. So thank you very much.
Thank
you. Anything else from the committee? All right, so we will vote. Technically, it doesn't have to be roll call. So all in favor? All opposed? And it passes 6-0. All right, so now,
For a minute.
yes,
We have red mics.
yeah, that,
Oh, there you go.
Thank you.
mine is dead.
There's a
Hopefully
green-
others are picking me up.
There's a green one there.
Do we,
Is that dead too?
oh, there you go.
Well, you need it more than I do right now.
There's one red one there.
Okay, so now we'll move back, but not out of order, back to new business. Actually, technically, we didn't take that personnel update out of order, but we'll be fine with that. Move to new business, E5, which is the annual school committee reorganization, and I virtually or physically hand over the gavel to Dr. Milichewski to run the next portion of the meeting.
All right. Thank you. So for this portion of the meeting, I'm going to be following policy BDA. So for those at home, I'm just going to quickly read BDA. It's just a half page right here. For the purpose of organizing the school committee annually, will elect its membership from a elect from its membership a chairperson and a vice chairperson will hold their respective offices for a term of 1 year or until a successor is elected. The superintendent of schools shall preside over the process of election of the chairperson. In the event the committee is unable to elect a chairperson, the presiding officer shall be the first available of the following individuals: immediate past chairperson, immediate past vice chairperson, or most senior member. This person shall serve until such time as the committee shall elect a regular chairperson. The majority of the members of the school committee will constitute a quorum. The election will proceed as follows. This two-step process, what I'll be following tonight. 1, nominations for the office of chairperson will be made from the floor. The chairperson will be elected by a majority roll call vote of the members present and voting. If no nominee receives a majority vote, the election will be declared null and void, and nominations will be reopened. Step 2, upon election, the new chairperson will preside, calling for the election of a vice chairperson. The procedure used for their election will be used the same as for electing the chairperson. And then any vacancy among the officers occurring between organizational meetings will be filled by a member elected by the school committee. The election will be conducted as described above. So we're going to move into that process right now. So first thing I'd like to do is just I will open up to nominations for chair of the school committee. Erin,
I'd like to nominate Sean.
any other nominations? Carla?
I'd like to nominate Tom.
Any other nominations? I'll close out nominations at this point. So now, as you know, we're going to go through a roll call vote. So we go in the order of the first nominee. So that was for Sean. So I'm going to start down with Erin. So Erin, in terms of voting for Sean, is school committee chair.
Aye.
Sarah?
Nay.
Chuck?
Aye.
Carla?
Nay.
Tom?
Nay.
And Sean?
Aye.
Okay. So now roll call vote for Tom as chair. We'll start with Erin.
Nay.
Sarah?
Aye.
Chuck?
Nay.
Carla?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And Sean?
Nay.
Okay, so given that no one received a majority vote, as I shared the process, the election was declared null and void. So we're going to reopen nominations. I did speak with legal counsel today around, so this process, what differentiates the second level. Legal counsel did share that at this point, it's fair to be able to open it up to discussions at this point too. So after we open up a nomination, there's the space for discussion. There'll be space for discussion until we close nominations, and then we'll reopen the vote again. So again, starting the process, open it up for nominations. Erin.
I nominate Sean.
Okay. Carla.
I nominate Tom.
Okay. And I'll leave it open for any discussion until we close the nominations.
Can I make a statement?
Go ahead, just open for discussion now, so.
So could potentially see where this is heading again, and, I've been really, bothered by, we've got a lot of emails and texts and stuff about this vote, and, and I've been thinking about that, and I thought we might end up like this, and I want to provide continuity or some level of continuity for staff, and maybe we just leave. I think both Tom and Sean have done a very good job. Maybe we just leave things alone the way they are now, so that we maintain continuity, because we can't seem to come to an agreement here. And just go another year with the way it is. I just throw that out there. I don't know.
Any other discussion?
Maybe I'm not interested in making a campaign speech, but just an observation. I think the idea that this sort of feels as high stakes as it does is interesting in and of itself, because the role of chair is supposed to be organize and run the meetings and execute the will of the committee. I think that we got to this place based on some perception or belief, or maybe just fear that, chairs can or will or have exercised power kind of above and beyond that, which is not, certainly not how I view the role of chair. But it's just an interesting place to find ourselves where this feels like, some make or break decision. None of the six of us, chair or not, are supposed to exercise any more influence over what ends up on the agenda, what gets discussed, what's sort of in scope for us to talk about, where the discussion starts, and it's just an interesting place to find ourselves, that's all.
It is an interesting place to find ourselves. I don't think it's just that, though. I think there's other forces that are part of that finding of ourselves, which we've seen in some of the emails as well. I don't need to make a campaign speech either. I think Chuck's proposal's fine. Part of me as well would actually like a reprieve, so I'm somewhat saying, I don't know, it's weird. This is a lot of work. And maybe I made it that much work. Maybe it's because of the transition here. Maybe it's because of the view that I had, which is slightly different than other things, and that we as committee members should control the committee meeting with support from the administration and not make it an administration meeting. I think we've done a pretty good job of that. We've had a lot of good celebrations this year as well. But it's a lot of work. It has distracted from my regular work as well. So I didn't think I was going to do this, but I think I'm tired, and I'm going to bow out. I'm going to decline the nomination. People might not be happy with that, but it's a lot of work. So if that's the case, then Sean becomes the person, and we'll see who becomes vice chair. I'm potentially happy to be vice chair, if that's what people want. I think there are other people here that probably deserve a chance to be vice chair as well, though. So if that's the case, I'm happy to move back in that direction. So I'll decline the nomination, and we can just move forward with the vote on Sean.
Okay, so I believe technically we're still in the phase, we're open for nominations at this point.
Yep.
Any other nominations or any other deliberation before we close out nominations? Okay, so we'll close out nominations. Looks like at this point, Sean was the only name put forward, so we'll move forward with roll call vote for Sean as chair. We'll start with Aaron. Aaron?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
Carla?
Nay.
Tom?
Aye.
And Sean?
Aye.
The vote is 5-1, so now I turn it over to Sean to move forward with vice chair.
Okay. So at this time, I'll take nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Carla. Oops, sorry.
I was going to do the same. So.
Would you consider a nomination?
I would, but I can always advise on the side as well.
Okay.
And I think Carla deserves a chance. And I think you guys are an interesting combo, right? You balance each other out pretty well. I think it's good to have the balance between the two. Frankly, the sides of our committee, right? And I think it also is interesting that as a member as the vice chair, she would also then be, and we already agreed that she's on the building committee as well, so that might bring some input into the morning meetings, presuming you keep those on a go-forward basis as well.
Okay. Any other nominations for vice chair? Okay. I'll close nominations and we'll take the roll call vote. Aaron?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And Sean is an aye. And I believe, and we have the liaison and subcommittee discussion. So I'm happy to introduce this, or you prepared the memo, so, okay. So, you'll see the memo that Tom prepared. I think in our discussions around tonight, I think we both sort of thought it was probably not the right thing to do to try and do any sort of major wave of reassignment. We're at the end of the night here. We probably all have a lot to digest based on the last few minutes. But we wanted to sort of tee up a discussion about kind of our current set of assignments and our other obligations beyond the liaison assignments as well. So I think those have really spiked this year with things like the policy subcommittee, with search committees, with all of the other things that have popped onto our plates. And so, wanted to just sort of open it for discussion, for thoughts that folks have about how we approach these assignments going forward, whether we need to rethink sort of our internal expectations about what the role of liaison looks like, maybe, and have an open discussion there, and then we'll give everybody some time to digest and chew on it, and maybe come back next time and have at our next meeting, have the formal reassignments as necessary. So I'll leave it open for discussion based on any thoughts there along those lines. Tom.
And I think there are certainly things that we should cull from this list. I'm trying to find it because I can't find it in my packet here. So it's on, page 19. So, I think looking at this list, I last year added a few to it and asked people to step into those roles, and I think they've been valuable. We added Bolt last year. We added Bylaw last year. I think those are valuable to keep. I do think, though, that I think we can obviously cross off the Ad Hoc Human Rights Committee because it's defunct now. And, that would free up a space. It's essentially been replaced by pair. So I would ask us to think about Bolt versus pair, and whether we want both. I think there's benefits in both, but it might be overcommitting us as well. Audit and Finance and Recreation and Select Board, we have really kind of no choice about. Celebration Committee, Aaron, I think we know that hasn't met necessarily, but that was really kind of for 375, but we've used it in other ways, like when to plan other events. maybe we don't need to name somebody for that, and we can just kind of stick our hands in the air if something comes around that we want to, participate in. RCTV, I'd love to see stay, and I'd like to see that expand a little bit. We talked a little bit last year about working with them to even improve some of this even more, and I know I haven't followed up on that, and that was my commitment, not Sarah's commitment. But I think we should cut the ad hoc, and then we should maybe cut celebration, and otherwise keep them as they are. I'll also, put a plug in.
What about HRAC, is that still around?
HRAC does still exist. They have met a few times. They don't meet often, and it'll be interesting to see if it still exists after PAIR really gets its ground going. So it might be smart for us, and I think we actually already currently assigned that way for HRAC and PAIR to be the same person, but something for you to think about, Sean, as you assign them. And then I'll end here in that I would think that we should reconsider the constitution of the policy committee, not because they haven't done anything, but they've done a ton, and they might need breaks. And I would like to be a member of the policy committee if we are willing to do that.
Erin?
I would like to apologize to HRAC because I did not even realize I was the HRAC liaison. This was a surprise to me, opening this up, so I apologize. I'm sure I was assigned back in July and it flew out of my head. So I apologize to HRAC that I have not served them well in my capacity as their liaison. But yeah, we should probably check on whether, they're going to be continuing to meet, and if we feel there's a need there. On any of these where we have two, do we need to continue to have two? Like, does Bolt need two?
Probably not.
Probably not.
I
think
get like
audit-
select board and finance committee because they're so meeting heavy.
Yeah.
So hopefully you can share it by having two, but is audit committee meet a lot?
Yes.
They do?
You're
But it's
voting.
important.
But you're
You're
voting
voting
members of the
Oh,
audit committee.
okay,
so
okay, so we
you
need
have
the
to.
two.
I meant to try to add that to this memo, and I missed that, so I apologize.
Okay. What about board of library trustees? Do we need two there?
I wouldn't think so. I also think another part of this is, when I used to be on FinCom, we would talk about sort of majors and minors in terms of liaison assignments, right? And your majors would be the ones that either met often or often had school committee, FinCom, in that case, relevance, and thus entailed sort of a heavier commitment. So that might be the other way to sort of think about this. I mean, audit committee, there have to be two of us, but I would consider it a minor because it's essentially 2 meetings a year, right? Bolt meets monthly, but there isn't always necessarily direct, school committee relevance to those meetings. So, we don't necessarily have to have somebody in attendance. I think the original sort of thought around liaisons was, who on the school committee do they know to reach out to and to pull in when there is something where school committee should be represented or included in the discussion. And, some of the committees sort of fit squarely into that bucket where maybe we don't need to carve out time to attend every single meeting as well.
That's an interesting discussion because I didn't have that impression. I didn't have that impression.
Treating them all like majors.
Yeah, I went to almost every Bolt meeting. And you're right, there's not a lot of relevance sometimes. But I think we as a committee should discuss what our role is and what it should be on these committees. With Sarah and I with Permanent Building Committee, Monday nights seem to always have other commitments. Well, Bolt and Permanent Building Committee both meet on the same night. But we would tag team that, which worked out well.
Tom, does on the track thing, is that sunset just something you put there, or was that voted on? Because I think we're going to end up probably going maybe into September, depending on when.
That was the initial charge that we voted on, so
Okay.
that we could so that we could come back with the name when we're back in school and when the track is open, and have essentially a ceremony in early September.
All right.
If we need to amend it,
Yeah, no
obviously
big deal.
we can, and it can be on the agenda as necessary.
So Carla, I mean, I think we can have that discussion, under sort of what we've posted here, right? So, yeah, I mean, that's sort of my understanding, or how I've sort of thought about it and treated it, is, tried to sort of be proactive about understanding if there's something specific, specifically relevant, and made the decision that way. And otherwise thought of it as being a resource, but I don't know if others sort of feel like that's appropriate, or have a different view of it.
I mean, I guess it depends on it. I think some of these I see our role as observational, and some of these I see our role as more inclusive. So I think it depends on what the assignment is.
Yeah, I mean, I think for select board, for example, I don't think Chuck or I went to the meetings this year, but we were always in contact or hearing what was going on, if there was something we needed to be aware of, or a vote we needed to, make sure they were doing or that we were doing. We had that communication. So to your point about being the reach out person, that was the way in which I adjusted that one. And obviously, I think probably since I'm not chair anymore, if there's anything else I need to be assigned on here, let me know what you need and I can figure out what works. I would think PBC should stay, since you guys are on the school PBC. Maybe that doesn't mean you have to attend every regular PBC meeting, but because you'll already be on the school PBC meeting. But I think this idea of being the relationship that they can reach out to, it starts though that first month or two of your liaison assignment, we have to make sure they know that you're the person, right? And then it's a matter of, well, the other question here is, which one of these are we voting members of? Like Chuck, I think we're recreation member voting, right?
Yeah, and
Right.
that meets every month, and we vote. Yeah, we have all kinds of different things we vote on. Yeah, that would be one. I'd like to stay with that. I enjoy that committee. And our CASA meets monthly as well, and that's also, I don't think there's ever really anything we vote on, but if there was, that position's a voting member as well.
So that might be something to consider in that.
Yep.
I shouldn't have said the coalition.
Coalition, yeah.
I'll never get that out of my head.
All right, so any other thoughts, feedback, overall observations with respect to liaison assignments, and then we can come back to it. Any, finalizing any adjustments next time around?
How do you want people to express their interest to you?
Yeah, I think, let me know first, whether you're interested in continuing on in your current assignments, or whether you'd like to phase out of some of those, and also if there's anything that you're interested in joining. I will, do my best to sort of and I'll bring up sort of a proposal and we can talk through it, and we'll include it in the packet and so forth. But I will do my best to balance the commitment, the commitments across everybody, taking into account the things that are going to sunset in a month or two, taking into account the things that are, heavy during budget season, all those things we'll incorporate into the thinking here. But if you could just give me a heads up on your desire to continue in your current roles and anything you might be interested in that you're not currently assigned to, we'll try to match as many of those preferences as possible. Okay. All right. Any other topics not reasonably seen within 48 hours or anything like that anybody wants to bring up before we take a final motion here?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Sarah? All in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.